I'm really aware of a lot of the issues around these kind of technologies and how they're used, especially by police and borders and stuff.
There's just very many unknowns in a technology that's rapidly coming into society, not only by police, but also by, for instance, voice identification on your phone, in shops, all of these other places.
It does give you a strong sense of being surveyed, which kind of, I don't know, it can make you feel like you've done something wrong.
When biometric data is used for the purposes of uniquely identifying someone, it has this higher sensitivity, but how is it used? And how do you feel about that use? How can we all, that's you guys, civil society, us as regulators, law enforcement bodies, how can we all work together to make sure we get the best outcome?
Biometric data is fundamentally different to data such as the address you live at or your email address, because it's much more intimately connected. Once your face is digitised and recognisable and on file somewhere, you can't change it.
I'd far rather give someone my fingerprint than give someone my face, because, you know, as a record, because the face feels far more personal. It's something that we're using to recognise biometric data amongst ourselves, you know, continually when we're talking to people.
One of the massive things is there's not enough protection for the individual. Markets and the governments have got more power than we have.
Presentations were all relatively nuanced, so everybody takes a different position in the field and have different opinions, but they presented it as neutral as possible to the groups, raising their own concerns.
So it's really important that digital age, identity and biometrics are all things that are developed that anybody can use. It should be something that that helps an individual be in more control, irrespective of that individual's background, race, orientation, gender, ethnicity. This should be something that is used positively for all. It should not exclude parts of society.
We don't want to stop the police using biometric data to keep us safe. These are all good things. But it's about how can we get the balance right, because it's all about the individual's rights and protecting those. When they're, you know, using a fingerprint or facial recognition, they're generally aware that this is, you know, some information about them is being used to do this. But I think sometimes they may not necessarily always capture what potential consequences of using that information would be, but also what their rights over that information are.
I would like a lot more clarity about what happens to the data, even though that I can see the positives for the use of biometrics. That in itself is a reason for being here.
I do have a very strong, genuine personal interest in public engagement, particularly engagement which goes beyond shallow headlines, where you get really genuine feedback as well, but informed feedback, because they've had the opportunity to hear about the depth of complicated issues.
I was aware that there was legislation, but seeing how large that was and how fractured it was and how there were so many organisations with different pieces in the puzzle.
I think it's really good to hear that there are so many well-intentioned people working with this technology, trying to make sure it works for society and works for everybody. That's been really great.
The public will be asked to really set their red lines, set their kind of conditions and their expectations when it comes to biometrics.
I was wondering how processes like this are made to get legislation, who decides, and it's us.